Okay. I guess we are back somehow. All right. Hello, thinkers. Welcome back to the Apex Mind. We are trying extremely hard to understand Hegel to the point that the stream crashed twice, and I'm doing this for the third time. And to understand Hegel, I wanted to understand what is real and what is true. There is a distinction that Hegel makes between what truth is and what reality is. And in order to understand that, I asked ChatGPT the question that how is a hallucination which affects me and therefore the world any less real or at least any less true than an object in space, like, let's say, a bottle kept on my table? Can you repeat the last answer again?
Sure, your hallucination is real in that it happens within consciousness and has effects. It changes how you act or feel. But for Hegel, it's less true because it doesn't hold up beyond your private mind. It breaks when tested against the shared rational structure of reality. A bottle, though, exists in that shared structure. It's recognized by many observers and fits into the coherent network of causes and meanings, the universal order. So both exist, but in different degrees of truth. The hallucination is subjectively real. It appears only for you. The bottle is objectively real, it holds up for everyone, and absolute reality is when both align, when something remains true across all levels, even through contradiction.
Interesting. So it's maybe different from at least what I understand, truth and the way to understand truth to be, because I don't see objective reality as objective in the first place. This is just the reality that I'm getting through sensory experiences, right? This is the reflection of sensory experiences within the confines of my mind, and therefore this is my mind's projection of whatever is reality. But it's not. I can't say it exists like this, right? It could be anything else. And then there is a me which is separate from it, and that is Atman, that sees it all, whose mind it is. And then basically the solipsistic concept of I think therefore I am. And when you even remove these sensory informations or inputs, and you remove the fact of at least you remove the conception of an I, you are left with pure awareness, which is the canvas on which this entire reality has been painted in, which I would equate to Brahman. But is that the way that you explained Hegel's dialectic and why he understands an hallucination to be less real than the object seems to take into consideration this reality to be real, then, in some category, not the what do you call I think therefore I am idea.
Exactly, you've put your finger on the deepest point of divergence between Hegel and the Advaita Shaiva style of thinking you're used to. What you're describing, open quote, all this sensory stuff is just the mind's projection. I can't claim it exists like this. Behind it is pure awareness, Atman Brahman. Close quote dot is the Advaitic non-dual move. Peel away appearances until only the unconditioned witness remains. In that framework, the objective world is not ultimately real. Only the canvas, pure awareness, is. Everything else is a dependent appearance. Hegel does almost the opposite. He doesn't start from the witness and strip away appearances. He starts from the immediacy of being and shows that the very distinction you're making, appearance versus reality, mind versus world, subject versus object, is itself a moment inside the process. In his system, the sensory objective world is not a false projection. It's the necessary self-externalization of spirit. Your individual mind is not a separate Atman watching. It's one of spirit's modes of returning to itself. Pure awareness is not a hidden background beyond the dialectic. It's the end of the dialectic. Spirit fully recognizing that what appeared other was itself all along. So when Hegel says a bottle is more real than a hallucination, he's not endorsing naive realism. He's saying, within the process by which spirit knows itself, the bottle stands at a more stable, less self-contradictory moment than the hallucination. He never steps outside that process to a separate timeless witness. For him, the timeless witness is what the process is becoming. In other words, Advaita begins at Brahman and treats the world as appearance. Hegel begins at the world and treats Brahman-like self-awareness as the culmination of the world's own movement. Does that distinction make sense? It's subtle, but it's the hinge of the whole comparison.
Interesting. So, what is his beginning axioms? Is his beginning axioms that what we see is real and the world is real? That is that where he begins with? What is he assuming?
That's the beautiful and frustrating thing. Hegel starts with no assumptions at all. He insists that if you begin with any fixed belief, the world is real, God exists, mind is primary, you're already smuggling in untested content. So he starts from the most empty thought possible, pure being. Just the idea of is. No qualities, no space, no mind, no world, just the bare notion of existence. And then he asks, can this thought even hold? What he finds is that when you think pure being with no determination, it collapses. It's completely indistinguishable from nothing, because to be something, it must have content, but it doesn't. So being and nothing immediately pass into each other. Their tension gives rise to the first real concept, becoming. That's the first dialectical movement. He builds everything else from there. So, no axioms, no sensory world assumed, just thought watching its own movement. Would you like me to break down that first triad? Being, nothing, becoming. So you can see how reality starts to form from that emptiness?
Sure. I wanted to do that. Let's begin proper with Hegel.
Perfect. Let's start from the very first breath of Hegel's logic. He begins with pure being, the thought of is without any content. No time, no space, no shape, not even something, just being. But when you actually try to hold that thought, it slips away. If being has no qualities, no difference, no distinction, then there's nothing to grasp. It feels exactly like nothing. So pure being and pure nothing turn out to be the same emptiness. Hegel writes, pure being and pure nothing are the same. But the key is what happens between them. You can't stop at either. The instant you think being, it fades into nothing. And the instant you think nothing, it fades into being. That movement, that self-canceling, self-renewing oscillation is becoming. Becoming is the first living concept. It's motion itself, the unity of being and nothing. In it, reality begins to move, to differentiate. From there, Hegel derives determinate being, quality, and eventually all the way up to life, mind, and spirit. So, to summarize simply, being empty, indeterminate. Nothing, the same emptiness. Their unity, becoming, the first pulse of reality. Would you like me to slow down here and unpack what exactly becoming means and why Hegel calls it the first truth?
Let me give you my idea of that, right? So what I understood by that is being, and you can only say something is a being when it is in contrast to nothing, and similarly you can only say something is nothing when you have a being to contrast it with. As such, this process of contrasting it with each other to affirm each other's existence would be the process of becoming. Am I right, or did I get something wrong?
That's actually a really elegant reading. You've got the heart of it. Yes. Hegel would agree that being and nothing define each other only through their contrast, and that this very act of differentiation is what he calls becoming. But he'd push it one step deeper. It's not just that they need each other to be understood, it's that, in truth, they are each other. When you think pure being without form, it immediately dissolves into nothing. And when you think nothing, it immediately flips into being. They're not two stable poles. They're a single movement, a kind of logical vibration. So becoming isn't just comparison. It's the living process in which both terms exist, only by transforming into one another. It's not that you have being and nothing and then combine them. It's that reality itself is their mutual vanishing and arising. Does that make sense? I can show you how, from that pulse, Hegel gets the first sense of something concrete, what he calls determinate being, Dasein.
Okay, okay, I get it. So the moment you think of being, you're already thinking of nothing, and by thinking of nothing, you're already thinking of being, and as such, they are technically one in the same things because their existence is dependent on each other. That dependent existence make it so they're linked to form a whole, which is therefore, let's say, becoming. It's like my torso and the rest of my body. They are part of the same thing, right? There can exist no torso in itself. It would most likely have rest of the body. Similarly, the rest of the body would not exist or grow into existence without the torso, and that is why they're one in the same thing. And I guess that is becoming.
Yes, exactly that. You've captured the motion perfectly. Being and nothing aren't two separate ideas that get glued together. They're like two sides of one pulse. Each instantly calls the other into existence, and their unity is the living process itself, becoming. Your torso analogy works well because it captures that mutual dependence. But imagine it even more fluidly, like breathing in and out, or a flame constantly consuming itself to stay alive. There's no static being or nothing, only the movement that keeps both in play. That rhythmic self exchange is what Hegel means by becoming, the very first truth of logic, because it's not dead abstraction anymore, it's reality beginning to move. Do you want me to show how from this movement he extracts the next step, determinate being, Dasein, where things start to have qualities and boundaries?
Sure. Let's take to the next step. I think I understand becoming.
Perfect. So, from becoming, Hegel asks, what happens when this constant movement stabilizes for a moment? He says that every act of becoming, every something arising out of nothing, eventually settles into a state of being something, a momentary pause in the flow. That's what he calls determinate being, or Dasein. You can think of it as the first thingness. It's still fluid underneath, but it now has a faint outline. It's being with a limit. The limit is what makes it this rather than that. But the moment you draw that limit, something strange appears on the other side. Otherness. If there's a this, there must be a that. So even in the act of defining something, you've created its opposite. So the dialectic now moves like this. Pure being and nothing merge into becoming, the pulse of emergence and disappearance. That movement solidifies into determinate being, something defined. But the limit that defines it already implies otherness, which will soon drive the next contradiction. Would you like me to slow down here and explain how Hegel turns this something versus other relation into his next key idea, quality and change?
Okay, so let me just understand this. So is it like a painting in the sense that when you do put, let's say, a stroke of paint on a canvas, what happens is that there is by the creation of that stroke, you're also creating the rest of the blankness of the canvas, the negative of it, in a sense. Does Is that what he means by being in nothing, being transforming into whatever you said? I think the opposite things.
Yes, that's a beautiful image, and it's almost exactly what Hegel means. When you paint that single stroke, you don't just create the mark, you also define the untouched space around it. The stroke and the blankness arise together. Each gives the other meaning. That's Dasein in action, being that's determined by its limit. So, in your example, the paint stroke is something. The untouched canvas becomes its other. Their relationship, the tension between presence and absence, is what makes the image real. That's Hegel's point. Nothing exists in isolation. Every something defines itself only through what it is not. Reality is that dynamic contrast frozen into form. Would you like me to keep going to the next moment? How these somethings relate and change each other, leading to the idea of quality?
All right, so I get you so far, in the sense that now, for example, I am a determinate being, and the rest of the world is the other, in the sense that they are not me.
Exactly right. That's the next natural realization in Hegel's ladder. By saying, I am this, you've already created a boundary. Everything that's not you becomes the other. Your being is determinate because it's defined by that contrast. But here's the twist Hegel loves. The moment you notice that your identity depends on what you're not, the other becomes part of you. You can't be you without the world that makes you distinct. So even while you stand opposed to it, you're linked. That tension, the push and pull between something and its other, is what drives the next movement: quality and change. Do you want me to show how this I versus other leads to transformation? How every defined thing carries within it the seed of its own change?
Yeah, do tell me that. I'll give you another example to solidify my understanding of this. So, is it like, what do you say? If you, I don't know, if you sketch something on the. Okay, fuck it. Just like. Yeah, continue with the next thing.
All right, so now that we have something and other, Hegel looks at how they interact. He says every something has a quality, a way of being that makes it what it is. But because it exists next to an other, that quality is always under pressure. The boundary that defines it also exposes it to change. Take your earlier painting image. When you sketch a shape, the shape's outline separates it from the blank space, but it also means the two influence each other. The light of the background makes the form visible. If you darken one side, the other changes too. So the identity of the figure already contains its opposite. It's becoming different while staying itself. That tension, holding its quality but being pushed by its other, is what Hegel calls change. And if that change continues long enough, the thing reaches a limit where its quality flips. It becomes its opposite. That's the first real sense of contradiction in the logic. Things don't just interact, they transform through their own boundaries. Would you like me to show how this tension leads to Hegel's next move, measure, where quantitative shifts create qualitative leaps?
No, I couldn't get this one. Like, you'll have to re explain this to me. How exactly is the otherness causing the determinant to change?
Yeah, that's the tricky bit. Let's slow it down. Every something by existing draws a line, this versus that. But that line isn't empty, it's an active edge. The other on the outside keeps pressing back on it. Think of fire. Its quality, being hot, depends on what it touches. If there's nothing to burn, it goes out. If there's fuel, it grows. So the fire's own nature can't stay still. It keeps reacting to what's outside it. That's what Hegel means. A determinate thing is never self-contained. Its definition already points beyond itself. Over time, that push and pull means the thing slowly changes. It can't stay pure something because its being is tied to what it's not. Eventually, it reaches a point where it turns into the opposite. Hot becomes cold, living becomes dead, self becomes other. So the otherness isn't just around it, it's within its very definition, quietly turning it inside out. Does that make more sense now? I can tie it to a simpler, everyday example if you'd like.
No, it doesn't make sense because I don't understand the logical steps that he's taking to arrive at that, right? When he says that being is determined on nothing and they together therefore are one in the same, I get that, right? I get the concept of becoming very well. I also get the concept of becoming such that there will be things and non things, right? There will be determined Dasein and then there will be the other. I understand that as well. Now, this particular aspect of the boundary blurring, changing, and ultimately becoming the opposite of what it was is not something that makes it very intelligible to me. It seems like he's telling me a narrative, but he's not justifying the logic behind it.
right to catch that. Hegel sounds like he's telling a story, but he's really trying to describe what happens when you analyze the concept of something to its limit. Let's rebuild the logic cleanly. When you think something, you're already implying that it is finite. It has a boundary, but finite means limited by another. So inside the concept of something, the idea of otherness already exists. It's not added from outside. Now, if the other is built into the very definition of something, then that something can't remain self-identical. To be this, it must constantly exclude what it's not, but the excluded other is part of its definition. Logically, it's forced to reference what negates it, so the contradiction appears within the concept itself. To stay what it is, it must continually point beyond itself. That pointing beyond is what Hegel calls becoming other, the process by which a thing turns into its opposite. It's not that he's observing physical change, he's analyzing what the idea of finite something entails. The concept logically contains its own negation, so change isn't optional. It's built into the structure of determination. Does that help clarify the logic behind the move?
Not quite. See, for example, I am something, right? And the entire rest of the universe is not me. So when I am trying to define myself, I define myself through the negation of the other. That makes sense to me, right? Okay, so this all is not me, and that therefore I am me. I can do that. And as the universe changes, the things within it also change, and therefore my reflection also changes, right? Because if the universe itself changes, then I have to point out that this new thing is also not part of me. So I can understand me changing in response to the universe. Two questions: where is the universe changing from then, if it was a perfect reflection of me? And secondly, I can understand change, right? In response to the other changing, I can understand how the thing is changing or I am changing, but how do I become the opposite? It does not make sense to me. I will still remain most of what I am, right?
That's a really sharp line of questioning, and it shows you're distinguishing between empirical change, me reacting to my environment, and what Hegel calls dialectical change, which is more abstract. Let me try to make that clear. When Hegel says something becomes its opposite, he doesn't mean it physically flips into another thing. He means that when you analyze its concept, you discover that what it is logically contains what it is not. The opposite lives inside its own definition. Take your example. I am me because I am not the world. That works only if the world exists as part of the very thought I. If the other disappeared entirely, I would lose its contrast and vanish. So your self-definition secretly depends on the other. That means the not me is already inside the me as its condition. If you follow that logic to the limit, the boundary dissolves. You realize that what you called other was your own definition reflected back. That's the turn into the opposite. Not a physical swap, but a reversal in meaning. The self that opposed the world discovers itself in the world. So becoming the opposite isn't an event in time, it's the concept flipping itself. Hegel would say that's how reason advances. Every fixed distinction, when thought through, reveals that it relies on what it excluded.
Okay, got it. So I have to understand these things not exactly as moving in time, but rather something that already exists. He's just taking me step by step to like explain the logic itself. And what he's trying to say here is that me, by the process of being myself, am differentiating myself from the other, and therefore within my properties will be the negation of the other as well, which will be a perfect reflection of the world within myself, and therefore I am self contained in a sense.
you've got the timeless logic reading, right? Hegel's moves aren't events. They're what the concepts are when you press them to their limits. One nudge, though, calling yourself self-contained, is a bit early in Hegel's ladder. At Dasein, determinate being, you are this, only by a limit that implies an other. That means the other is in your concept as negation. But you're not yet truly self-contained. You still depend on what you exclude. True self-containment shows up later as being for self, and ultimately in spirit concept, where the otherness is fully internalized. Where the logic goes next. Clean steps. One, something other, limit, finitude. Something is finite. To be what it is, it points beyond itself, its limit. So finitude is self-canceling. The finite tends to go beyond itself. 2, bad infinity versus true infinity. Bad infinity equals endless beyond, beyond, beyond. A, clay, not A, not A, an infinite straight line. True infinity equals the beyond is internal. The finite is only a moment inside a self-returning whole, a loop. Here the other is owned from within. 3, being for self. Now, as something that has absorbed its other, it relates to itself through negation, self-relating negativity. This yields the one, which then posits the many via repulsion attraction. 4, quality, quantity, measure. As relations proliferate, determination thins into quantity. Measure reunifies them, quantitative drift causing qualitative flips, e.g. water hitting.
Slow down. I understood till the part where I become my negation, or the thing becomes its negation by the virtue of containing information that it's what it is, right? The Because it itself is separate from its other, therefore it also, by the process of negating the other, contains the other within itself. I got it till that point. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, and then continue with the next step. That's all. Okay, let's go back. I understood being and nothing. I understood the process of becoming. I understood how that ultimately leads to a determinant thing, and that determinant thing negates, exists by the means of negation of everything else, like a stroke of paint on a canvas. And by differentiating or itself from the other, by defining itself, it is also containing the negation of the other, and hence by that it contains the other. I understood till then. Now continue.
Exactly. You've got the structure clean. Hegel's next move builds straight from that. Once something contains the negation of its other within itself, it's finite. Here's the logic step he makes next. To be this, it must exclude that. But exclusion means reference. You can't hold the line without constantly pointing to what lies beyond it. So finitude isn't stable. The concept itself reaches outward. This reaching beyond is what Hegel calls the bad infinite, the endless attempt of the finite to go past itself into the other. But then he realizes that this going beyond never escapes the same structure. It always comes back to itself. The beyond is already included in the self. When the finite sees that, it becomes the true infinite, not an endless line, but a loop. That's the precise logical shift that turns something limited by its other into something that contains its other. It's not a story about time, just the logical unfolding of what being something means. Would you like me to show how this finite, bad, infinite, true infinite transition gives birth to what he calls being for self, the first form of real individuality?
Okay, folks. So I think we've had enough Hegel for today, and I'll be ending the stream now. Yeah. Sorry for the disconnections in the midway, and the reason there are two streams. But yeah, this was fun. I'm going to continue this later. I need to get some things done. All right. See ya. Keep thinking, keep analyzing, and remember, as I always say, patterns. They're everywhere.